Welcome back to the N.B.A. podcast, episode 11. What's up, Patrick?
How are we doing?
Oh, we're doing good. It's 4 o'clock on a Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern time, that is. And we've had even more NBA games since the last time we talked. You know, there's like NBA games every night. And the first two teams we're starting off with actually played in an NBA game against each other last night. Whoever won was going to be the one we talk about first, and unfortunately, it was your least favorite team, the Mavericks. So that's who we're going to start with. The Mavericks, they're 6th in the West, 7-5. They're 9th in offensive rating with 113.9 points per game, 9th in defensive rating with 110.3 points per game allowed, and I guess the big storyline is Luka. You were looking up some usage numbers before. I have them here as well. His usage rate is at 38.9%. That is third all time behind only Westbrook and Harden in their respective high usage seasons. So what have you seen from the Mavericks that I guess you're being justified right now in your preseason hatred for them?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's really carried over for me from last year, and it may not necessarily show in the defensive rating, but I do think their defensive identity is still there, which, like, when they
ninth is pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to happen because I think some of their style in terms of their offense with Luka going off, it's going to lead to some shootout games that end up being high-scoring affairs. But also, their starting lineup is geared towards as well, with Bullock and Finney-Smith in the starting lineup, and starting, I guess, with JaVale or Dwight Powell at the 5. Those are three really good defenders for those kind of positions. So, I mean, they have the personnel to do that. And, Luka's not a bad defender in his own right, and Spencer Dinwiddie as well. He's I would say, a league average defender, if not above that. So, they have good defenders. So I'm not too surprised about that. Offensively, I know, it's not bad for them where they're at right now in terms of offensive rating, but I had my concerns going into the year, and so far I do think it's kind of justified because what I'm looking at is, like you said, usage rate for Luka is through the roof, which I expected, and is why I had him second in my MVP voting, because I knew he was going to put up some absolutely absurd statistics this year.
2K numbers. He's at 34 points, 8 assists, and 9 rebounds, so that's just 2K stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair to him, his field goal percentage is up from 45% last year to almost 50% this year. That being said, his three-point percentage is down from 35% to about 28.5%. So that's where his game's been kind of getting damaged a little bit, which doesn't surprise me because the increased number of shots that he's taking this year, it's going to lead to more tiredness. His legs won't be under him as much. Which doesn't surprise me. His free throw numbers are through the roof, though. 7.5 free throws attempted per game last year. He's at 11.5 this year, so a four free throw advantage per game. His free throw percentage is still at 75%, so he hasn't improved a whole lot from last year, but it's still not bad considering the sample size. But the issue is really getting somebody to come with him, and the issue has been that really the only guy that's been consistently able to contribute with him on offense has been Christian Wood. Christian Wood's actually missed a couple games recently, which led to Kyle Kuzma basically slandering the Mavericks organization the other day, basically saying that there's no threat on the team besides Luka and Christian Wood, which is interesting. He has been good, though, 16 points a game. He's done it very efficiently, 57%. He's shooting 42% from 3 on 3 attempts a game.
His stroke is so nice, man. From
yeah, it's pretty impressive. The only thing that's not impressive is 68% from the line, considering how nice his shot looks from 3. I mean, when the game we played them, the first game of the year, every time he shot it, I just thought it was going in. That's just kind of how I see him from behind the 3-point line. But besides,
that shocked me too. Seeing 68% from the free throw line, him and Luka, you would think with their strokes that they would be much better free throw shooters, but that's pretty concerning when your two main scorers, and then Christian Wood is only getting 24 minutes a game, by the way. But the two guys who are supposed to go get you a bucket can't make a free throw at a rate that you would want them to,
Yeah, it's concerning because they're probably their best free throw shooter, I would say, would be Spencer Dinwiddie, who's at 80%, which is a respectable margin, obviously. But with that being said, you'd like someone more consistent. Reggie Bullock has a good percentage in his career at 84%, but his free throw attempts this season are zero point 0.4. So I don't really think in crunch time, if the other team's fouling you intentionally, you're going to be giving the ball to Reggie Bullock. So um, with that being said, I think a big part of their struggles this year has been Dorian Finney-Smith taking a major step back this year. Defensively, he's still been good, but his percentages shooting-wise have been way down, 47% to 43.5%. Overall field goal percentage isn't bad. But he was basically a 40% clip last year from three. This year he's at 32%. I mean, that's a big decrease
Yeah.
from somebody whose role literally in the offense is just to sit in the corner and wait for Luka to pass him the ball for an open three.
Well, that's all these guys, and he's shooting 29%. Like you said, he's shooting 32%. Reggie Bullock is shooting 29%. Tim Hardaway 33%, which, by the way, his first 2 full years in Dallas for Tim Hardaway, those were actually outliers where he was shooting near 40%. Like 33 is more his career average. So like people before the year saying, well, they lost Brunson, but Hardaway is coming back. He's not that guy, man. He's all right. He's a good player, but for what they need, because you mentioned like how heliocentric it is around Luka. Well, they're 7th in three-pointers attempted this year at 38.3, but they're 18th in percentage at 34.8, and a big part of that is those guys we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the obvious changes they need to make, is I think you just have to start Christian Wood at this point, just for the overall flow of the offense. Considering as well the fact that their defense, if you're going to keep Bullock and Finney-Smith in the starting lineup, you still have enough good defenders there. You have enough size, because that's one of the other concerns, of course, is size. And, because Christian Wood is a smaller center at about 6'9", 6'10", 215 to 220.
But
so,
I feel like they have to punt on that, because something I noticed, which is actually pitiful for them, is they're 29th in rebounds in the whole league. 30th is the Sixers, which they're always somehow terrible at rebounds. They're 28th in defensive rebounds, 26th in offensive, and that's only leading to them being 27th in second chance points. So that even more so contributes to their only offense being Luka basically getting into the paint and doing Luka things. But that's why it's just like, who cares? McGee, whatever. I feel like their destiny, they have to do Christian Wood and Kleber. They're already shit at rebounding. You need more offense on the floor. And Christian Wood hasn't even been that bad on defense compared to what he was on the Rockets either. So he needs more minutes. He needs more playing time. We've been saying it since the beginning of the season, but we're really seeing it as the game. And fair enough, they won last night, but dude, it took like 40, 12, and 12 from Luka to do it. Like, this is not sustainable. It's just not.
Yeah, that's the thing for me, is because everybody's going to look at it and say, like, holy crap, Luka's statistics are so good. But the amount of effort they're requiring for him, because you look at some of the usage rates and you say, oh, well, Giannis is at, he's at 36.5% compared to Luka's about 38, 39%. But like, Giannis is not ball handling
right
100% of the time like Luka is. The only other person on that team who ball handles is Spencer Dinwiddie and maybe like Frank Ntilikina a little bit, and a little bit of Tim Hardaway Jr. But like,
and part Luka of the reason, sorry to cut you off, part of the reason Giannis's usage is that high is because Middleton is out. But go on.
And Drew Holiday as well.
Yeah.
Which is definitely a factor. I mean, Embiid's also up there, but at the same time, he rarely handles the ball. So the next guard you're looking at is Ja Morant and Trae Young, who are like 3 to 4 percentage points lower than Luka. But also, not going to elaborate too much on them, but they have players on that team who can take the pressure off of them. I was just concerned about the roster construction at the start of the year, and right now, I think it's justified. They are 7-5. They're sitting right at about the 6th seed currently, which is kind of where I had them projected anyways. But I also think that going down this current route they're going is not going to lead to permanent success, if that makes sense. I feel like this is something that's not going to be sustainable. I think Luka can still put up the numbers, but his effort on defense, it's going to start waning because he's not going to have the energy to do it. And you're one injury away from I don't even want to say Luca. You're one injury away from like Dinwiddie from being absolutely screwed because you have nobody else. You literally have nobody else. So I think a trade is likely for a ball handler, and I think they have enough assets that they can trade away. And then the other change, I was talking about changes to the starting lineup. That one thing that I did thought that was good that you mentioned was like the possibility of playing Wood and Kleber like at the 4 and 5 together. That honestly is pretty intriguing because you get more size in there. And also Kleber and Wood are both quick enough to guard some guys at the 4. Obviously, it could be a matchup dependent thing. But I definitely think that's an improvement. Unfortunately, even though I love the guy and how he played for us last year, the JaVale experiment has kind of failed this year. It's not looking very pretty for him. Normally a guy who can score on an efficient basis, he's not even getting any looks, and he's shooting only at 50% this year compared to 63% last year. His scoring is cut in half. His total rebounding is cut in half. It's not looking pretty for him, and considering they signed him to a multi-year deal, it was a bit of an interesting decision considering that he's a 35-year-old who basically is completely dependent on his athleticism. I hope for his sake he's able to turn it around. But the other change that I was going to suggest is I think it's honestly might be time to see Josh Green enter the starting lineup, specifically probably for Bullock, I would say. Josh Green is shooting 50% from 3 this year, only on 2 attempts a game. But at the same time, considering how he's played so far, I think you have to put him in the starting lineup. And also, he's a defensive-minded player, so I don't think you're going to lose a ton in starting him over Bullock. But, the Mavericks may just be intent to ride this out, considering they are sitting at 7 and 5 in the 6th seed in the Western Conference.
And it is early still. It's early.
Yeah, but I tend to err on the side of precaution, and I think that they should definitely. I think they could be doing more successful if they made a few changes.
Yeah, one more thing on them. I wanted to kind of bring it back to the point that us and everyone else is making on Luka's high usage, and like you were saying with him getting worn down. I mean, you could see it not just on offense, but I mean the guy's Embiid levels of not getting back on defense and just being super lazy on defense. And I've told you a stat I've been looking at a lot more recently is driving. And I was looking at the driving numbers this year because, I mean, that's part of what's contributing to him being fatigued is because that's his game is getting to the basket, out muscling you. And he's shooting great from 2 with 60%. And on his drives, he's shooting 65%, which the 2 people that drive more than him, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Ja Morant, they're only at 54% and 46% respectively. So he's doing it in a big way, and he's assisting 3 times per drive. That's crazy stuff. And by the way, I have to mention Brunson is 4th behind him, so they're really missing him. So yeah, I mean, he's playing to his strengths, getting to the rim, using his strength, but then playing to his strengths is making him weaker in a lot of other places, and it's because of, like you said, the roster construction. So these are all points a lot of people are making. This is nothing new here, but it's concerning to say the least. And I find it funny that I was like a Luka Mavs fanboy the past few years, and I've just kind of cooled off on it because partly, man, I just don't have much fun watching that. Like, I feel like Brunson did make it a lot more watchable because I just love him as a player. It was cool having 2 dudes that, like I just said, he's right up there with Luka and drives. I don't know. It's a rough watch, these Mavericks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because you have somebody like Luka, which everybody knows. I think I'm not the biggest fan of him, mainly because of the playoffs last year and the fact he just killed us. But with that being said, somebody of his talent, I think this is a poor example of how to construct a team around somebody like him. I think part of it as well is his personality. I think he wants to be that guy and take all the shots, which is fine. But sometimes as a coach, you have to tell the guy, look, we need you to save some energy because at this rate, we're talking about usage rate and that kind of stuff. He may be able to do this throughout the regular season, but in the playoffs, when you start getting 3-4 different defenders on you every night and stuff, he'll be dead by the time he reaches the second round, if they even reach it that far. Because like last year, the Mavericks don't make the Western Conference Finals without Brunson taking that load off of him on a lot of nights.
Exactly. I saw something on Reddit earlier that kind of intrigued me, and I know this is kind of crazy talk, but I want to bring it up to you. It was asking like, who would you rather have, Luka or Tatum? And I couldn't believe it, but I was like, not to like make it seem like I'm leaning so hard against Luka, but I'm like, the way Tatum's playing, and you know how high I am on him. Tatum is shooting 60% from two this year, around the same as Luka, but he gives so much more on defense and everything. Obviously, he's nowhere near the playmaker Luka is, but I would say this year Tatum so far has closed that gap much more than we would have thought in the summer. What do you think of that?
I mean, for me, it's just it's not a bad take because, especially defensively, Tatum offers you so much. I think he's more of a team-minded player, but I don't know. That's it's been an interesting debate though because I've been seeing it a lot on Twitter specifically. People starting to put Tatum in those discussions with like Giannis and Curry for best player in the league right now, and I guess Kevin Durant as well, which is a testament to him. He's worked very hard, and the team success certainly helped his case as well.
Especially with everything going on over there. I mean, he's just playing out of his mind. I love to see it. But we're not here to talk about the Celtics, damn it. Our next team, the team that the Mavericks beat last night due to the heroics of Spencer Dinwiddie hitting 3 threes back to back to back in the fourth quarter. The Portland Trailblazers, you were low on them. I was also kind of low on them, maybe not as low as you, but they're third in the West at 9-4. They're 16th in offense, which is kind of surprising with 111.6. Sixth in defensive rating, 109.7 points allowed per game. Now, that's a surprising part, especially with how much zone they run, but I guess they're playing to their strength because they got bigger, athletic dudes. The wings have panned out more than me and you could have hoped for. Like Jeremy Grant has been huge for them. Shaden Sharp as a rookie. That's what I'm talking about with the athletes. You get your rookie Sharp flying like he does. So many guys. And Josh Hart, he's like that mold of Javonte Green and Bruce Brown that we like, the point guard type that's actually kind of a wing and does all the hustle plays, all of that. This team has been so fun to watch, and I'm super happy for Blazers fans that I finally see a team around Dame that makes sense. There's depth, there's youth. They're playing together. They got great chemistry. Dame's back to Dame time. My guy Anthony Simons, that $25 million a year is looking like a steal. What have you saw from them besides the last 2-minute report that made y'all lose against them?
Yeah, that was a tough loss to take considering they basically, the refs screwed us down. But it happens. It happens in the regular season. I'd rather have it happen now than in the playoffs. I'll say that as much. I don't really hate on them too much considering last night they missed a lot of, let's say, a couple of key players. I mean, obviously the main piece that they've been missing all season has been Gary Payton, which considering their defensive rating is that good without Gary Payton playing any minutes, I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to see.
That is going to be so fun when him and Josh Hart and Simons are on the floor. Oh, it's going to be so fun to watch.
But also last night they didn't have Justice Winslow, which it's funny that we're talking about Justice Winslow this way, but he's actually found a bit of a home with the Blazers. Offensively, I'm not going to say that he's all of a sudden turned a corner or nothing, but he's contributed a little bit as a ball handler. I mean, he's getting 3.5 assists this year. He's averaging 8 points a game to his credit, but the defensive part is the main reason why. And especially against the Mavericks, he probably would have been the primary defender on Luka when he was on the floor. So, and then also Nurkic has missed some games, which hurts because Drew Eubanks is not used to Nurkic in any way. But talking about the Blazers in general, I mean, the Jeremy Grant trade looks like a genius move.
Oh my God, doesn't it? They barely gave up anything.
I'm not here to slander the Pistons too much because I like their offseason, and it may just be a sense of they like, I guess, Bogdanovic's fit better with Cade. But for the Blazers, I mean, it makes so much sense. They gave up a pick that's owned by the Milwaukee Bucks, basically. So that's not going to be a good first round pick at the end of the day. It's going to be a pick to the back end of the first round. And they get somebody who is one of the best two-way guys at the power forward position in the league. And I mean, his numbers this year, I mean, his scoring numbers are somewhat in line, but I mean, having a player like him is somebody they haven't had in a while. Robert Covington, I think, is very similar to him on the defensive end in terms of their style, but Robert Covington's not putting up 21 points a game on 50% from the field and 46% from three. I mean, he is not doing that. And they haven't had a wing like this in a long time. Somebody who is perfect. I mean, it's really frustrating because I look at my sons and I wish we had Jeremy Grant because he would make so much sense for us too. He's just the type of guy you want on your team.
And on that note with him choosing to go to the Pistons instead of the Nuggets that year and like doing his own thing and people were giving him shit for it. Well, look what that got him. He got 2 years as a primary scorer. So he turned from a great role player to like a mega great role player on this team. He, like you said, he's the perfect fit. He's what they've been needing. And I'm starting to think we just need to hold off on some of these trades. Because as much as we love Norman Powell and as much as Robert Covington has status around the league, everyone, including me, and I think you too, were giving them shit for those trades they made last year. Well, I don't know. Not looking too bad now. I mean, you have Keon Johnson out of one of those trades who, if he pans out in anything, he goes right along with what I was saying with their athletes. Like, if Keon pans out, imagine like Keon Johnson, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp. That's 3 like mega flyers that Dame could throw the ball to, which, by the way, Dame is assisting at a higher rate this year. I mean, it's crazy. I love to see these stories because we knew it was going to happen. There was going to be 1 or 2 or a few teams that completely played beyond expectation. I'm just happy this is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. If you look at it just from a slate of the team constructed from now to some of those Western Conference those teams that reached deep in the Western Conference playoffs a couple of years ago with McCollum as the number 2 option. Effectively, Simons is basically replacing McCollum's production exactly, if not at a more efficient rate. I don't want to slander CJ too much because he's an awesome player. But they didn't have the wings that they do now. Like I said, just talking about Jeremy Grant versus Covington. Josh Hart compared to Norman Powell, I mean, that's pretty much an even swap, if not better, with Josh Hart. I think is a little bit more advanced on defense. And then you have Shaden Sharp, and then you have eventually Gary Payton Jr. Nasir Little is a very talented young player. You know, they have options at wing, and that's the thing. Going into the season, I don't think I was that high on their wings, but everybody has surprised me on this team. I mean, Jeremy Grant, especially that night he hit the game winner. People forget Dame didn't play and Anthony Simons didn't play either. He was the leading option in that game, and he proved why he was the leading option.
And he dropped 37 last night.
Yeah, he is very capable of games like that. So it's a surprise how well they're doing, but at the same time, you know, is it sustainable long term? I don't know. They have young guys who are hungry on that defensive end, which is why you're seeing such a culture shift. And also, shout out to Chauncey Billups too. I mean, you know, a lot of people were kind of like frustrated with the Blazers getting after him or getting him as a coach last year and that kind of stuff. Credit to him, and I think a lot of the defensive thing helps when he was coach under Ty Lue for a while. I think he's probably taken a lot of Ty Lue's defensive schemes with him. And so far, I've been very impressed with the Blazers.
Yeah, for sure. One of the most fun teams to watch. I hope they sustain. I think they will. I definitely think they're at least making the playoffs at this rate if their guys could stay healthy, particularly Dame, who was already injured earlier, but luckily is back. Another team we both love, and contrary to the Blazers, we absolutely love them in the offseason, and they're pretty much making us valid right now as the Cleveland Cavaliers, 3rd in the East at 8-4, though they have lost 3 in a row. They're 4th in offensive rating at 114.9, 2nd in defensive rating at 107. Those are some elite numbers right there, man. What have you been seeing from the Cavs besides the amazing year from Donovan Mitchell?
The funny thing is, you look at the Cavs this season, and you really have to say, like, they could even be better because they missed Garland for quite a few games. They've had other injuries they've dealt with. Jared Allen, I know, has been dealing with issues. They don't even have Rubio yet. Dean Wade has missed a couple games recently, so they've been dealing with some injuries too. But, I mean, I just love it. You know, the question going into the season was like, what are they going to do with the 3? That was the main question I had. They've decided to stick with this big man mentality with Mobley or Wade at the 3, whichever one you consider. It doesn't really matter. One of those 2 guys is playing at the 3 most of the time, and they've thrived with this. I mean, they thrived last year with Markkanen doing it, and so far Dean Wade has provided so much defensively for this team along with Mobley. I mean, you have two guys that are 6'10" to 7 feet who can move and can guard guys on the perimeter and switch, but can also contribute in the interior. And then in the interior, if you actually get past them, you have Jared Allen waiting for them. So defensively, maybe a question was the shortcoming of the guards with Garland and Mitchell defensively, who I don't think either are that bad at the defensive end. But you have so much size in the middle, you can kind of make up for it. Besides that, like I said, Garland was out for a while. Donovan Mitchell basically took on the point guard role and did it very effectively. I mean, his assist numbers are just a little bit up from his career numbers, but the thing is like he's taken on such a load and he's been doing it so well. You talk about Luka struggling a little bit with the advanced load and all that, especially from three. Mitchell has taken the workload and he's been shooting 43.5% from three on 9.5 attempts a game. Gosh. I mean, that's way ahead of his career averages recently. He was at 35 last year. So he's taken an almost 0.9% jump from three. So
the floor really opens up for you when you got such elite big men, not just Mobley and Allen, but like you said, not to say Dean Wade is elite, but he's a great role player. Love has been more of a 3-point shooter this year, but I mean, you have him too. So you just have so many weapons that can get inside, but that could still punish you on the outside. So one thing I did want to mention real quick, you were mentioning Jared Allen was dealing with something. I didn't know that, but I have noticed this year that he misses a lot of little bunnies right next to the rim, and my suspicions were confirmed when I looked at his percentages. His 2-point percentage is down from almost 70 to like 56. So that'll probably go up as the year progresses, but it definitely seems like he's missing like a lot of easy shots inside that he usually makes. So what injury is he dealing with?
Just a nagging ankle injury. He hasn't missed any games this far, to my knowledge.
Right.
But he's been questionable the last couple of games. He's suited up and played though. So I don't think it's one of those things you do wonder maybe they'll have to sit him out a game or two just to have him fully heal, which it could be responsible. But at the same time, Jared Allen, like, I don't want to say last year was an anomaly maybe, but with Donovan Mitchell on this team, they don't need him to really do anything offensively. Whatever he gives them is really just an added bonus. Yeah, I think you're seeing it more like Mitchell's the number one option, Garland's number two. Three is probably going to start being Evan. I mean, right now it's actually Kevin Love, to be honest, when he's on the floor. But Evan Mobley, I think, is probably going to start taking that step to become that clear third option.
Well, Mobley, he's around the same points per game, like around 15, but his 2-point percentage is up by 50%. I mean, the 3-pointer still isn't there. It'll come as his career progresses because he's shooting damn near 77% from the lines. When you watch him, he's got a good stroke. And I've just noticed he's added some moves into his bag in the post. Very good footwork. Just smart, patient moves in the paint. Really like the progression from Mobley, especially on defense. Like you were saying, you get past this great defensive front line, which, by the way, Donovan Mitchell is much improved there from last year, which is great to see. Then you have to deal with Mobley and Jared Allen. Like, that's why they're second in defense right now, man. It's super fun to watch.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the offense is not really, I guess, surprising going into this year because of the talent. But the defensive stuff is the only kind of worries I had. I was like, I don't necessarily have a feel for how good they were going to be this year, but they've completely surpassed my expectations so far. And then also, like, some of these role players we can give a shout out to. I don't even know if you can call him a role player at this point, but Karis LeVert has been outstanding this year. Actually, looking at it, his efficiency numbers are down, but especially in that time where Garland was out, he had several big games that helped them win games at that time. So he's the kind of guy now as the sixth man, if you want to say. He's going to be somebody who's going to be very talented. That's the thing. You look at some of the best teams in the league. You're looking at the bench mob. Their bench mob when Rubio comes back. Rubio, Okoro, LeVert, Seti Osman. I don't know how to say his first name.
You got it.
Kevin Love. I mean, that's a fun bench mob, and you still have Robin Lopez as well as depth. Raul Neto as depth. Lamar Stevens played minutes last year. Dylan Windler, I'm not a huge fan of his play style, but I mean, let's think they're deep. They've got like 12, 13 guys that would crack an NBA rotation for any team, so.
Well, not all of them sit on the bench. Robin Lopez, I noticed, sits on the floor most of the time. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that's just kind of the way he is. Right. I think everybody likes Robin Lopez. He's just kind of he's almost got like that Bill Walton kind of vibe. Obviously, nowhere near as good as Bill Walton was, but he has that kind of vibe about him.
Yeah, and you mentioned LeVert. His efficiency isn't great right now. That's mostly because, like you said, he goes from big games to not so big games, but shooting 42% from three, if that could even stay around like 37% as the year goes along, that's really all they need. They have enough on the perimeter and ball handling with Garland coming back and with the season Mitchell is having. So definitely that's still kind of the talking point, like, because Dean Wade has been good, LeVert's been good, Okoro not so good, Osman okay, but I mean, if they do improve that 3 spot, then I already think they're a contender now, but then I think they'll just be one of the main contenders if they can like improve that LeVert spot, even though he has had big games.
Yeah, I don't. I'm looking at their roster and I really don't actually know because, one of the things we talked about preseason was like LeVert for Crowder is something that was discussed. I don't know if this team is better with Jay Crowder at the 3. I honestly, I'm not. I just think it's kind of a move where it's like, would you really make that move and maybe disrupt your team chemistry?
So you think they should just ride it out this playoffs, and if they lose, they lose, but they did it together? Like,
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, maybe you see something like, the first when the Suns made the finals, we didn't even like have to trade anybody for Torrey Craig. We just got him for cash, like something like that. A move and sort of that kind of mold.
mm-hmm.
The thing is, I just think for them, unless you're going to actually trade for a big name guy who you're like undisputedly he's going to be the guy at the 3. I just think. Yeah, just ride it out. I mean, you have until the trade deadline, obviously, to make that move. You still have 3 months. So I think you just ride it out at this point. And then at the trade deadline, if you see any sort of struggling for some of those role guys, but like they have options, like we said, Dean Wade is the kind of the starter, I guess, but they have Osman, they have LeVert, they have Okoro. You have multiple options there of different style of players too that you can use. So
right.
I don't think it's a situation where it's like, they're giving Lamar Stevens minutes at the 3.
Yeah,
not trying to trash Lamar Stevens, but I think he's fine. But it's not like that kind of situation. They have options.
All right. Well, right behind them in the East, the Hawks. They're 4th in the East at 8-5, 15th in offensive rating at 111.7 points per game, 12th in defensive rating. That's 110.5 points per game. So that's about the middle of the pack in both areas. I hate the Hawks as I'm a Hornets fan, but and I hate Trae Young. I really hate Trae Young. He's probably one of my most hated players. I mean, what's with his hair, man? I don't get it. I don't get it. But honestly, I've kind of enjoyed watching them this year, and here were a few things that like caught my eye. So they're dead last in passes per game in the NBA. That's Kelly Oubre numbers, 18.5 passes a game. But I mean, they still are 16th in assists because, Trae and DeJounte, a lot of the time when they pass, it's like a lob or just directly an assist. Those 2 guys, though, DeJounte and Trae. So DeJounte's usage rate, 25.9%. Trae's is 35%. I mean, I know they're your 2 best players, but 50% of the time they have the ball. That's, make of it what you will. 29th in three-pointers attempted this year. 25th in 3-point percentage. That's concerning. But 4th in total rebounds, which makes sense because they have Capella and then Okongwu coming off the bench, and they're huge. I mean, they have DeAndre Hunter and John Collins starting, which is good that they have size, and their defense has been better than past years, so that's probably part of it. But then at the same time, I feel like there is some redundancy here with DeAndre Hunter and John Collins, and then like we mentioned, Clint Capella and Okongwu. Maybe Okongwu isn't quite ready yet Capella's had some big games, but he's around where he was last year. DeAndre Hunter, he's shooting around the same amount of 3-pointers as last year, but the percentage is down. I thought that might have gone up, but the 2-point percentage is up a little bit. But I feel like you don't need that. Like, that's not what you need for this team. You have elite mid-range shooters in Trae Young, and it's not like DeJounte is like elite, but he's gotten a lot better. And we're both big DeAndre Hunter fans, so I guess that leaves the odd man out as John Collins, who I'm also a fan of, but who has also been on the trade block for a few years now. I don't know. It's an interesting team. I definitely like watching them a lot more with DeJounte Murray instead of just Trae Young's stupid ass dribbling the ball the whole time. But at least he has had some. He's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like the guy. But he's had some really great plays, passes this year. But I've really liked the DeJounte Murray fit for this team. What have you been seeing from the Hawks?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch a ton of them, mainly just highlights. But I do think the concern is definitely the lack of 3-point shooting. With that being said, it should have been something I really expected because the past couple of years it's been Trae. Obviously, he's going to get his from 3. But it's always been Herter or Bogdanovic
who has been hurt.
Yes, that is part of it as well, because Bogdanovic is a accomplished shooter, although he was coming off one of his worst seasons last year. He took a big dip down. But for his career, 38% 3-point shooter. So that will definitely help when he gets back. With that being said, I mean, Herter is, not to talk too much about him, but he's been very impressive so far.
He's so good.
Yeah, it's one of those things you kind of look at it, you're like, oof, that might end up hurting. Not having, no pun intended, it might hurt not having him to come off your bench, I guess, or even start at the 3 if you wanted to go with a smaller lineup. Looking like you said, there is some redundancy with DeAndre Hunter and John Collins. I do think John Collins has been solid enough this year, considering the thing is, it's we knew his numbers were going to go down. His points have dropped almost 4 points a game. His efficiency is a little bit concerning. But with that being said, it's not too much of a deal. And actually, it's really just 3-pointers that's been tanking his efficiency. He's only been shooting 25% this year compared to 36% and then 40% the previous 2 years. But his 2-point percentage is actually up to 61%. So it's not too concerning on that. And you just knew his numbers were going to take a tick down, specifically scoring wise, because of the addition of DeJounte. I do think one of the points I was going to mention first, but you kind of answered it yourself, was obviously for you as a Trae Young hater, it's a little bit funner to watch when DeJounte's on the floor, because DeJounte helps take a lot of that load off, which is kind of for me, last year, obviously I hated watching them destroy us in the playoffs, but when I watched the Mavericks outside of our series, watching Brunson ball out was kind of a lot more fun than watching Luka just beat Luka. No disrespect to Luka or Trae Young, because they're both obviously incredible players.
It's funny, they're tied together with that trade, and we had the same experience, but with both of them. That's funny.
I definitely think, since we kind of talked about the Mavericks earlier today, I think the Hawks roster is constructed a lot better for sure.
Yeah.
I think their center rotation is one of the things I really liked the most, because it's really kind of Capella and Okongwu are really kind of the same player at this point, and they just provide you defense, rebounding, and lob threat. Just 48 minutes a game, you're going to have that, unless you decide to go small. So they
did play Frank Kaminsky last night with Okongwu out, so
yeah, Frank Kaminsky is certainly a different option. One of the parts that I've been excited about, which I know you probably already know who I'm about to talk about, so cover your ears, but AJ Griffin has been really cool to watch. I know it hurts. It's gonna hurt. At the same time, we picked Jalen Smith instead of Halliburton, so I have that same kind of thing, but Griffin's been really good and efficient this year. 46% from 3, overall 51% field goal percentage. Only 12 minutes a night and only 5 shot attempts per night. But he's been really good so far in the limited role, and I really hope his minutes get increased. It just doesn't make sense for me. I get playing somebody like Justin Holiday over him, because Justin Holiday is obviously a very experienced role player. But I'd be starting to siphon some of those minutes away. I mean, Justin Holiday is 33 years old, almost 34. He's not going to be contributing this team beyond this year. I just think you give all his minutes to AJ Griffin, or the majority of them. But I do like some of the players on this Hawks bench specifically. You know, obviously the starting lineup's been talked about. And I think the fit between Trey and DeJounte, it's still something that's going to kind of take time. Especially Trey Young's ability off ball. That's really the main part of the piece, because I think that's where they'll be the most. I think they're more effective with Trey off ball than DeJounte off ball. I think that's pretty clear at this point. But the role players on this bench, there's just so many intriguing pieces. You know, you talk about Trey Young and DeJounte. The third ball handler, I guess you want to consider it, would be somebody like Aaron Holiday, who's been having a very good season so far. He's always been a sharpshooter, but 50% from three is pretty impressive. Only a shot, only on 1 3-point attempt per game, but he's been effective when he's been called on. Obviously, having him and his brother, I believe his brother at least, Justin Holiday, is good to have. But then AJ Griffin and then Jalen Johnson. I mean, you have wings. Those two guys, Justin Holiday and DeAndre Hunter, you have enough wings there. Even John Collins, if you want to consider him that. But it's been good to see him get a minutes increase, Jalen Johnson, up to 14 minutes a game, which is really good to see. Hasn't necessarily done a whole lot in those minutes, but for the Hawks, you have the talent at the front end with DeJounte and Trey and John Collins and Capella. Now you need some of these young guys on this bench to step up and really have a supporting cast for when you get in those playoff minutes and DeAndre Hunter gets in foul trouble against your Giannis and KD and Tatum. You're going to need those guys to be back behind them to help out. So I think it's one of those things, especially the DeJounte and the Trey factor. It's going to grow as the season keeps on going. But considering that they're basically starting anew, I think so far being 8-5 is a good start for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely better than I thought. One thing, though, it's like that I noticed, you'll look at a lot of their players' stats, not a lot, and this is true of a lot of older NBA players, like mid-20s, but just not a lot of their players, including DeAndre Hunter, are improving from last year. And DeJounte Murray, but he was already all-star. A lot of their numbers are staying around the same as last year. That's why as much as I'm sad the Hornets just gave up a pick for peanuts instead of getting either Durant or AJ Griffin. That's why I love the point you made with AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson. Like, they need to have a little bit of development there because they're not all the way there as a team. And like I said, there is redundancy. And like you said, Capella and Okongwu, it's nice to have that 48 minutes of that great production from what you want in a pick and roll center with Trey Young and DeJounte. But that redundancy, like we said how the Cavs, we kind of thought like, probably don't make a trade around the trade deadline, just play it out. Atlanta, I know they've been trying to trade John Collins, but since he's the odd man out, I just really wonder what you could get back for him, because with how pitiful their 3-point shooting is, I just wonder if like it would be better if Justin Holiday was ideally AJ Griffin, but he's young, so let's just say Justin Holiday was starting and DeAndre Hunter was the power forward, and then you had AJ Griffin off the bench. Like, what could you get for John Collins? What do you want for John Collins? Do you trade a lot of other people for a bigger star that becomes available? It's definitely a really interesting thing to look out for this year. Like, what are the Hawks gonna do come trade deadline time? Because if they keep this up, they'll be a really active team, and plenty of teams are gonna be selling for that Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes. So I'm glad you picked them as someone to talk about, because as much as I hate them, it's been kind of fun to watch them, and I like that they made the big move for DeJounte, giving up nothing but those picks pretty much, and they're definitely an interesting team in the East. Any other thoughts on the Hawks?
I do think it's important that you mention that, because I think there's a big similarity. It's not the first time we compared them in this episode, but I think John Collins could be traded in a similar way like the Mavericks with Porzingis last year. Obviously, they're a little bit different players, but I do think the way that offense might open up, like the way the Mavericks did it last year. And it's not, Porzingis obviously is a lot different because he's like kind of at this point primarily just a 3-point shooter more than anything else offensively. But I think that offense, specifically considering John Collins has not been shooting the three well this year, I think opening it up and having like DeAndre Hunter at the four and then having a knockdown 3-point shooter at the three, it may be beneficial to this offense with two ball handlers, especially like DeJounte, who kind of prefers the mid range at this point. So I think that is something to look out for. And I think John Collins would have, interest around the league. I think the Suns specifically,
Yeah.
like I don't think we'd be able to get him for Jay Crowder and Shamit and picks or whatever. But
Could
you
you?
know,
You might be able to. Collins for Crowder, like you said, like Shamit and like a first round pick. I feel like that could be enough to get it done.
it may be, but are they also that just seems like selling low to me, and I think somebody could probably beat that offer. I don't know what the offer may look like specifically, but it depends on how win now they are. Because Jake Crowder acquiring him is very much a win now kind of deal. Is Shamit kind of redundant with Bogdanovich when he comes back and the Holiday brothers? I don't know. I mean, we could offer them like Saric if they wanted a Kaminsky clone or something. It's one of those things. I just think we need to throw somebody else in there, and I'm not quite sure who that would be at this point. But I would be very interested in John Collins starting at the four for us. I think it's something we should have looked at this offseason, and we could get him without giving up Ayton or Cam Johnson or Bridges. That would be interesting. But I do think it's a good point. But I think that may be one of those things. They may ride it out for this year specifically, and then maybe look in the offseason. But like you said, a team. I think they're definitely a win now team, even though they have the young players. But I think it's definitely going to be a situation where they will be active at the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be really interesting to see, and a lot of this, because we keep saying it. The caveat is we're 13 games in. We'll see what happens in 20, 30 more games, what the league is looking like. Because I mean, the Utah Jazz are 10-4 right now. Who knows what's going to happen? But so far, all these teams we talked about, pretty just goes to show how many great storylines there are right now. And I feel like we did a pretty damn good job covering all these. Patrick, thanks a lot. As always, it was fun as always. I feel like we're just getting better and better. We're like AJ Griffin. We're shooting 50% from three now. Any other closing thoughts before we go here?
Oh, I really enjoyed this one. I think we talked about some good teams and then like some more, I don't want to call the Mavericks middle of the pack teams, but so they're definitely different storylines,
Yeah.
different kind of storylines in terms of, is this star being used too much? Is this star adjusting to playing with another star? This guy, Damian Lillard, is back, but his team is so much better than the last time he played, so many intriguing teams I think we talked about today.
Yeah, I mean, and those teams, just the dynamics too, just like, I know I mentioned it like 3 times, but seriously, something that stuck out of me doing the research for this one with that Portland team is just like, I'm really excited by the athletes on their team, like just seeing Shaden Sharp, because the Hornets played them the other day, so just seeing Shaden Sharp just jump above Mason Plumlee's bum ass, and I trust me, we're gonna have a segment on him because I'm doing some research there. Anyway, before I go on, thank you so much for listening, whoever did, and that's it.